Okay, Jordan, you want to say opening prayer?
We always thank you for this day. Thank you for your Shabbat. And we'll lift up prayer for fellowship and for the teaching being done here today. Just thank you and praise you.
All right, so been thinking a lot about, well, some different things. Kind of had them on my heart, and this is an odd situation because I really don't know that he actually gave me this message or this teaching, but it's kind of a compilation of things that I've been led to study on for my own purposes in the last month. So we're going to start in the book of Genesis and work our way through some scriptures on related topic. As I was looking back over my studies for the month, it looked like it was interesting to see how they all kind of connected, and I didn't really think about the connection completely as I was going through it. So let's look at Genesis chapter 29. Bashirit, if you're in the study Bible. We'll start in verse 14. It says, Laban said to him, "You are indeed my own flesh and blood." After Yaakov had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Why should you work for me for nothing, just because you are my relative? Tell me how much I should pay you." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was good-looking with beautiful features. Yaakov had fallen in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you 7 years in exchange for Rachel, your younger daughter." Laban answered, "Better that I give her to you than to someone else. Stay with me." So Yaakov worked 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed only a few days to him because he was so much in love with her. It struck me as I was studying this earlier I guess it was late last month. There is so much relationship going on here. When we read through it, usually it's taught about the relationship between Yaakov and Rachel and how much he loved her, and he was willing to work 7 years for her, and then it became 14 years that he had to work for her, but he loved her anyway. And you get farther into the story, and we talk about he loved her even though she was barren. The name of their second son, when she finally gave birth, she had 2 sons that she gave him, Yosef and Binyamin. Binyamin literally is the son of my right hand, is what he named her, or named him. And we talk about that relationship, but we don't talk so much about his relationship with Leah, or Bilhah, or Zilpah, or Laban. We gloss over those. And being Messianic, we talk so much about, it's not about religion. Orthodox Judaism so much is about, the rules that the Rabbim have made up. Okay? Are you following the Talmud? Are you following, do you understand the Zohar? What all these things, the Mishnah. And we being Karaite Messianics, we strive to stay to adhere to the Torah, but because we understand that it's not about the religion, the man-made rules that in most cases were supposed to help us better understand the Torah, but people got so fixated on those that they missed the original message. And so we talk about it's not about that religion, it's about our relationship with Him. And this situation that we see in Lavan's camp is a picture of a lot of different types of relationships. Okay, so Lavan is Yaakov's cousin once removed. He's also becomes his employer. He becomes his father-in-law. Okay, twice, because the first time he swindled him basically, and we see later on that when Yaakov leaves, it's time for him to leave with his family. Lavan tries to stop him from leaving. Okay, because the reverse there is that Yaakov had become Lavan's, not just his employee and not just his son-in-law, had become his source of blessing. He had been a blessing to him with regard to his flocks, with regard to his wealth, with regard to his trade. He had become a blessing to him because he was enlarging his camp, which means he had more hands to work. So the Hebrew word for relationship, it's not in the text. I had to look it up. But the Hebrew word is kashar. Okay? And it doesn't just mean like how you interact with people. Okay? It means literally, it's from the same root word as knot. Like when two strings are tied together in a knot. Okay? It implies something that is joined or something that is not meant to be separated. Okay? We live in a society, we live in a throwaway society, right? And, people have things, they use them for a while, they break, they don't even bother to fix them, they throw them away, right? And people, that gives us a mindset. We talk about a lot of times, people look at that with marriages and family connections and friendships, okay? And even employment relationships. One thing goes wrong, you just throw it away. You go find someplace else to work, or find somebody else to work for you. Find a different spouse. Okay? Things get thrown away because people forget that there's a knot. There's a reason why when you get married it's called tying the knot. Okay, that's actually an old Yiddish saying. It's been translated to English. And I think the reason there is that they understood, and the people who came up with that saying were trying to emphasize that kashar, that relationship is a bond that's not supposed to be taken apart. Let's take a look at Isaiah 49, because we're going to talk about the most important relationship we can have. We're going to talk about our relationship to our Creator. So we're going to Yeshayahu 49. And we're going to begin in verse 14. But Zion says, Yehovah has abandoned me. Yehovah has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her child at the breast, not show pity on the child from her womb? Even if these were to forget, I would not forget you. I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are always before me. So that word forget is shaketh. Shaketh does mean to forget. I'm saying that wrong. That's the hard rolling C, like at the end of it, shakach. Shakach. And it does mean to forget. Okay, but it doesn't mean like Yarden here tells me something or I tell him something and he forgets it. Okay, that's not the meaning of this word. Forget as in to neglect. Okay, like to forget, like to remember something but to forget its importance. Okay, or its significance or its value. Okay, so Zion, the children of Yisrael, were saying Yehovah has forgotten us, has neglected us. And he says, even if a mother with a newborn baby were to forget that baby, even if that's possible, it's not possible for me to forget my promise that you are mine. Okay? He goes on and says he engraved them upon, or us, upon his hands. And that word engrave is interesting. In the Hebrew it's shakach. Okay, this is actually a poetic statement. So you got the shakach, which is forget or neglect, and you've got shakach, it's spelled differently. The first one is Shin Kof Het, and the second one is Shin Kof Kof. Okay, so it's two totally different words, but they're pronounced the same. It's like read and read. Okay, it's like the reed that grows, or you're going to read the book. It's like write, and write. You can have a religious right, you can turn to the right, you can do what's right, you can write something down. It's all different words, right? Correct? Okay. But they're all pronounced the same. And you can use them poetically to make... Do you see what I'm saying there? You could use... Okay. That's really what the author is doing here. But that second one is pronounced the same. It doesn't really mean to engrave. Like, I mean, it can. I can see how it could be used that way. But it's not like I've taken a chisel and I've engraved you upon my hands. Okay? It means an image. Okay? It can be used for everything from writing to a tattoo. Okay? This word could apply to that. But it can also mean to imagine, or to see something that isn't really literal, but you can see it in your mind. Okay? And so whether he's saying, I've written your names, I've written who you are on the palms of my hands so I can't forget you, or whether he's saying, like like a mother sometimes will tell her child, when you were little, I can just see you in the palms of my hands. When you were little, you were so small. Okay? My mom's done that. She talked about how when I stretched out my full length the day I was born, I almost made it from her elbow to the tips of her finger. Okay? So that's, I think, really where what he's telling the prophet to tell us. Is he says, even if a mother forgets her child, you're written on me. Your names are in the palm of my hand. It's also important to understand that in the old Hebrew, that just like we say, it's in our hearts. Okay, like we imagine that's where we feel things. Obviously, our feelings are scientifically, we know it's all chemical stuff in our brains. But to the ancient Hebrews, they understood the palm of the hand in general, but especially the palm of the hand, to be connected to the heart. Okay? And they said that's why when we're upset, our hands shake. When we're angry or hurt, they clench to protect the innermost parts of us. Okay? When we love someone or want to show them affection, we might like put a hand on them. Okay? And so they understood this connection. And so when he says, I've engraved you on the palms of my hands, he's saying, I've taken you into that part of me that is my heart. Okay? The closest you can be to my heart is where you are. Does that make sense? Okay? Do you understand why it's important to understand how he looks at our relationship with him? Okay? All right. But he goes on to say something else. He says, I lost my place. Anyway, he goes on to talk about their walls being in front of him. Okay? It says that, sorry, the wind flipped my page. That's what happened. It says, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are always before me. And that word wall, is Hama, or Hami, Mia. Depending upon there's a slight discrepancy there in the ancient text about whether it's Hama or Hamia. The root word is the same, and they both basically mean a barrier. Okay? And I think what he's saying there, because if you follow the text out further, it goes into this. I think he's saying, I love you so much, I'm holding you as close to my heart as I can. But you've put a wall up between us. You've put up a barrier that keeps me from showing you my love. Let's take a look at 1 Kings 17. Might help if I went the right direction. You know, when you... Well, we don't... There's no discrepancy over the contents of the Tanakh, but depending upon the translators, some of them go back, like in this particular one, they go back and they use the order of the books that is traditional in the Jewish setting versus what we sometimes get used to if you read either of the translations that the two of you are using. Kings comes right before Chronicles. Okay, here they're actually separated by several books. So we're going to chapter 17, verse 12. Actually, let's back up a little bit and we'll start in verse 8. It says, Then the word of Yehovah came to him, Get up, go to Zarephath, the village of Zidon, and live there. I have ordered a widow there to provide for you. So he set out and went to Zarephath. On reaching the gate of the city, he saw a widow there gathering sticks. He called out to her, Please bring a little water in a container for me to drink. As she was going to get it, he called after her, Please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. She answered, As Yehovah your Elohim lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of meal in a pot and a little oil in a jug. Here I am gathering a couple of sticks of wood so that I can go and cook it for myself and my son. After we have eaten that, we will die." Eliyahu said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go and do what you said, but first use a little of it to make me a small loaf of bread and bring it out to me. After that, make food for yourself and your son. For this is what Yehovah, the Elohim of Israel, says: the pot of meal will not get used up, nor will there fail to be oil in the jug, until the day Yehovah sends rain down on the land." She went and acted accordingly to what Eliyahu had said, and he and her household had food to eat for a long time. The pot of meal did not get used up, nor did there fail to be oil in the jug, in fulfillment of the word of Yehovah spoken through Eliyahu. You know, I used to read this passage, and I thought that the miracle here started with Eliyahu, for those who don't know, is Elijah. That the prophet showed up and tested the woman's faith, and she passed the test, and they were blessed. But something I figured out earlier this week, doing word studies on the passage, is that there was something else going on here before Eliyahu showed up. And the first thing that clued me in on it is that Yehovah sent Eliyahu to the woman. Something was already in process there. It wasn't that he showed up and tested her and she passed the test. Something she had already done. I realized there had to be something significant about this woman to make her be the one person that Eliyahu was sent to. And it took me a lot of research, but what I came down to is this: Atzah, the word here for sticks. I always read it as she was getting little sticks to kindle a fire. Those of you who've done wilderness survival training with me, you know how to build a fire from little sticks to build coals so that then you can put logs on, right? But Atzah doesn't literally mean a little stick. It doesn't mean kindling. Okay? It simply means a piece of wood. And it can be anything from that little piece of kindling to the trunk of that tree over there. If we cut it down, it would be an Atzah. Okay? So that got me to thinking, if it doesn't have to be a little stick of wood, then it doesn't actually have to be for starting a fire. So I said, okay, so what else could be going on here? And it hit me as I was studying out, what other things could be used for. When the priests would remove the offerings from the table of the showbread, they would take them off and they would eat them, but they would take them off, and rather than touch the tables of the showbread, they would have a piece of cloth on the table, and they would put a stick through the end of each piece. They had like loops at the end of the cloth, and they would pick it up that way and move it off of the table, and then put a new piece of linen across the table. Is my understanding of how that worked, so that they would never touch the showbread table. Okay? I think what was going on here, because she talks about her and her son, there's no, she's a widow, her and her son, I think were reenacting to the best of their ability in this time when they couldn't go and give proper worship. I think they were doing exactly what her name means. Kaylee's name means all that I have is dedicated to God. Okay? Kaylee Lizbeth, that's what that means. Okay, I think that's what they were doing. I think they were reenacting the removal of the showbread, because what the priests would do then, after it was offered on the table, they would then take it off and put new bread on as an offering, and the old bread would be eaten by the people, the priests, the people who had put it there. Okay? I think she had started at some point saying, okay, we can't go to the temple and offer the makings for the loaves. We can't offer the loaves. We can't do this properly. So in our home, we are going to reenact this. Okay? Kind of like a Moedim, or the Moedim, a Moda is a reenactment, a rehearsal, okay, for what will be done in the in eternity, okay, in the kingdom. I think they were doing that in their home with regard to the showbread, and I think they were doing it because she said, we're going to eat this and then we're going to die. I think she was saying, this is all we have left and we have no means of getting anything else. And yet our trust is still in Yehovah. Okay? Our trust, we've been praying and praying and praying that he would deliver us from this famine, from this starvation. Our trust has remained in him right up to this time that we're giving our last bit of offering, or last bit of food we have, we're giving as an offering, and we're going to consume it, and then he's going to have our lives because we have no other way to sustain ourselves. They did that, right? Not just doing it, but doing it right up until the end. You know, as Scripture says that he who perseveres and overcomes, that's who will have sanctification. Okay, I think they have persevered and overcame to the very last possible moment, that 11th hour situation, and that's when the prophet showed up. And I don't think Eliyahu asking for what he was looking for was really the test. I think she had already been tested. Eliyahu showing up and asking her for food and something to drink when she didn't have it to give was less of a test and more of the reward for passing the test. Does that make sense? Okay. This, I know, we've got the autumn Moedim, the days of awe are coming up. And I know there are people who think that I take them way too seriously. You know, I look at the dates that are projected, and I look at the moon, and I look at you know, different people when they argue back and forth. And we just had this conversation the other day, Yarden, about, you know, why did they have to make it so difficult? Why can't they just look at the moon? Okay? And people are like, well, why do you have to make it so difficult and care that much? I want to be, and I want us as a family and as a congregation, I want us to be the widows who are found worthy. Okay, I want us to be in that position. When we go to the door at Pesach and we look for Eliyahu, okay, people laugh about it, that, okay, not in this group, but people laugh that we do that still to this day. Okay, I look for the day when Eliyahu's going to show up, and he's going to say, what's that? You couldn't go to Jerusalem for Pesach and do it properly, but you did it in your house anyway. You couldn't go up to the Mount of Olives and pitch your sukkah, so you did it in your backyard all these years. You passed the test. Okay, I want to hear those words someday. So, Yarden, you asked me, and you said you thought you had the dates wrong. You're right, you have them wrong, in my opinion. But one of those is wrong because I was looking at the projected date, and then since then I've done some counting off days and calculations. So part of that is that you probably just wrote down what I said a month ago. Okay? But before you leave today, I'll help you get it right. Okay, so we can do that. Let's go to 2 Chronicles 32. We're going to start in verse 24. Around this time, Hizkiyahu, that's Hezekiah, for those following in the English, or in the without the restored names, became ill to the point of death. But he prayed to Yehovah, who answered him, even giving him a sign. However, Hizkiyahu did not respond commensurately with the benefit done for him. So in other words, he didn't show gratitude. Remember we were talking earlier about, he says, I hold you as close to my heart as possible. It's like your names are written on my heart, but there's a wall between us that you put up. Remember that? Hizkiyahu was putting up the wall. The widow did not put up the wall. The widow remained faithful even when it looked like there was no point. Hizkiyahu saw that there was a point. Okay? He was healed. He knew that he should be doing this, and yet he didn't do it. Because he had grown proud. So the text says. He didn't do it because he had grown proud. Thus he brought anger on himself and on Yehudah and on Jerusalem as well. So at this point they had Jerusalem. At this point they had the temple. They could go and do worship, and he didn't do what he should have done. But Hizkiyahu then humbled himself for his pride. So he figured out what he'd done wrong, and he made it right. It says, both he and the people living in Jerusalem, so that Yehovah's anger did not strike them during Hizkiyahu's lifetime. Now, Hizkiyahu had vast riches and great honor. He provided himself with storage places for silver, gold, precious stones, spices, shields, and all kinds of valuable articles. Also storehouses for the harvest of grain, wine, and olive oil, and stalls for all kinds of livestock, and pens for the flocks. He provided cities for himself and purchased flocks and herds in abundance, for Elohim had made him extremely wealthy. It was this same Hizkiyahu who blocked the upper outlet of the Gihon spring and diverted the water straight down to the west side of the city of David. Hizkiyahu succeeded in all that he did. However, this is the part that really caught my attention. In the matter of the ambassadors from the princes of Bavel, who sent to him to learn of the marvel that had taken place in the land. In other words, the princes sent ambassadors to find out, how is it that you're so blessed and we're not? Elohim left him by himself in order to test him, so that he might know everything that was in his heart. He goes on and talks about the other activities of Hizkiyahu were recorded in other books. It struck me as I was reading this, and I said, what does it mean he left him? Yehovah doesn't leave us. For one thing, he's omnipresent. For another thing, this was a king of Israel. Actually, it would have been a king of Yehudah. But he was Ben Yisrael. He was Melech of Yehudah, reigning from Jerusalem. How would he leave him? This Hebrew word is for that is left is azaru. And it doesn't mean leave like I get in my car and I drive and I leave and go to work every day. It means if I teach my child to do something, if I teach Kaylee to do something, and maybe in karate class, and then I go and I stand in the corner of the room and she doesn't think that I'm watching her, she thinks I'm playing on my phone or something, or working with a different student, and out of the corner of my eye I'm keeping my eye on her to see if she's doing the technique the way I taught it to her, or if she's trying her own thing, or what she's struggling with if she's not getting it right. That's what azaru means. He stepped away from him, gave him distance and independence, and waited to see what he would do. And then I was like, but wait a minute. He's omnipotent and omniscient. He knew what he was going to do. He'd already seen it, right? So that didn't work. That didn't make sense to me either. So I dug a little deeper. You see where it says that he left him to see what was in his heart. Remember, we're talking about the heart and the right hand and the whole. Remember that? This is where this all ties together, folks. That word, try, test, some translations say, is nasa. And nasa, it does mean to try. It also means to probe. Okay? To investigate, to dig into. It's also the word in modern Hebrew. It carries over to us today, and we use it when we talk about writing an essay, like a scientific essay, like for to be published in a journal. Okay, we've done all this study, all this research, we've found out everything we can about this subject, and now we're going to write it down and present it for other people to study. Okay? That's the word that's used here, nasa. Literally, okay, the word that's heart here, I don't think we're talking about Elohim looking at Hizkiyahu's to see what's in his heart, because he already knew that. I think what we're looking at here, I think a clearer translation would tell us that he stepped away to allow Hizkiyahu to probe his heart, to probe Elohim's heart, saying, I've looked into your heart. I've taught you what is right and what blesses me and what will get you blessed. But now people are coming and asking, how have you been blessed? Are you going to take the credit for this? Are you going to be prideful again? Or are you going to give me the glory? Are you going to show them that they too can be blessed if they will honor me? You know, in Yirmiyahu it says, those who bless me, those who honor me, them also will I honor. Okay? And I always say the mainline believers get it backwards, because it's taught today in most churches anyway that we should be grateful when he blesses us, and he says if we bless him, he will bless us. They forget that part. Okay? He is always willing to bless us as his children. We are the images in his hands. We're engraved in his heart. But we tend to put those walls up, those barriers, and the way we bring them down is to honor him so that he can honor us. Bless him so that he can bless us. And in order for us to do that, we need to probe into his heart. That's why it's relationship. Okay? If you're on the job and you want to be a good employee, you have to know the intentions of your employer. You have to study that and understand it. And when you do, you become a better employee. If you're the employer and you have an employee who is being a blessing to you by doing everything you want and then some to meet your goals, then you study that employee, in part so you know how to reward them, and in part because you want your other employees to figure this out too. What's different about this person? Okay? It's the same way in marriage. You study your spouse. Okay? It's the same way even in a courtship. Your potential spouse. That you study them, you learn them, you figure out, what makes them happy. And is this something that you're willing to commit to? We study what's in his heart by doing the Moedim. Starting with the weekly Shabbat, and Pesach, and Hag HaMatzot, all the way through to the last great day. That's how we write the essay about what's in his heart. There's one more Hebrew word I want to throw out to you today. Well, there's a few of them. It starts in, they're all related. They're three forms of the same word. Dodi is the root word. Dodi. Dodi is the word in Hebrew in the Song of Songs where it says, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Dodi is beloved. We want a beloved relationship with our Creator. He wants one with us. If we want one with Him, we have to take down those barriers. We do that by keeping the Moedim and the other mitzvah, but starting with the Moedim. This same word is the root word for David. Okay, in fact, if you say Davidi, which literally means to be descended from David, David being King David, okay? Davidi literally means to be descended from him and is spelled exactly the same as Dodi. If you use the vowel pointing is different, but the consonants are all the same. Okay? Only the Nikud are different. Who was David? He was the man after the heart of Elohim. Okay? That's what we need to be. Not meaning that we won't mess up. He messed up a bunch. But his heart was always in the right direction. Although he got blindsided, he stumbled and committed sins that he shouldn't have committed. Okay? He did some very unrighteous things. But his intention from beginning to end was to be right with and have a beloved relationship, just like his name derives from, a Davidi or a Dodi relationship with him. Okay? The last word is yad yad. Okay? And Dodi is hidden in that yad yad. Okay? But it's a root word for it. Yad is a form of yod. Yod is a picture of the hand. Okay? In the Paleo Hebrew, it's a picture of a hand. It looks like this. Okay? Or an outstretched arm. Okay? Yod yod literally means hand in hand or arm in arm. Do you see how that derives from the word for beloved? Okay. Two people, you know there's something special about that relationship when they're walking everywhere hand in hand or arm in arm. Or you throw an arm around a brother and you give him a hug because you know he needs it. Not everybody does that. Not everybody has that relationship with everybody else. But when two guys walk up and pat each other on the back, you know, one of them's having a bad day and the other one's trying to make it better. Remember that open hand we were talking about? Okay. If we want the barriers to come down, we have to draw close to him. We draw close to him through the Moedim. The Moedim are the means by which we live as his beloved, and the means by which we walk with him hand in hand and arm in arm.